Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents A King to be Protected by Brea Alepoú. Narrated by John Solo. Titus, King. Wrapped in the heat of bodies was the most relaxing way to sleep. Titus was currently buried under a pile of his keepers, minus Kale. But Titus wouldn't force Kale to sleep in his bed. He understood that Kale was confused and still learning so much about the world he had just stepped into. He'd been surprised when Kale had taken a shower with all of them, so he wasn't worried that Kale wouldn't come around. Seth, are you hungry? Leave it to Seth, his alpha, to notice that he was awake. Titus wiggled a little, burying himself farther under Seth, and moved his hand to touch more of Adam, who was on the other side of Mozzie. Mozzie, of course, felt Titus move, and he moved closer to Titus, if that was even possible. Every inch of Titus was covered by his men. Titus. Not yet. I'm too warm to move right now. Titus relaxed farther into the bed, the warmth lulling him back to sleep. How much his life had changed in a few days. He would have never pictured himself in a huge house in a large bed under a pile of men. Sure, he could dream, but even his new reality had never been something that occurred in a dream. What if it was all nothing more than a dream? And when he woke up, he would be either in a jail cell or in his old studio apartment above the shop. He hoped not. That would be the worst. He would rather never wake up than go back to not feeling the love he felt with all of his men. He felt lips press against his head. Seth, we are real, and you aren't dreaming. Mozzie, I'm real. If you need a reminder, I'd be more than happy to prove it. Titus moaned as Mozzie's hand wandered to his dick and stroked it. He had no idea how Mozzie had even gotten his hand down there. Titus. Mozzie, if you keep doing that. Titus lost his train of thought as Mozzie continued to stroke him, Titus's hips flexing on their own, trying to increase the friction. Mozzie's hand disappeared before Titus could finish. He groaned in frustration. Mozzie. Sorry. Before Titus could say anything, Seth's big hand wrapped around his dick, picking up where Mozzie had left off. Seth moved his hand faster, and Titus couldn't hold back, soon crying out in pleasure as he came. Titus. So good. Titus started to touch Seth, but Seth was sitting up and getting out of bed. He felt Mozzie and Adam get out of bed as well. What's wrong? Titus asked. All of them moved to stand in front of him, facing away. Seth. Someone is here. Before Titus could ask who, the door to the room opened. Mozzie instantly had a fireball ready, and Seth had his throwing knives in his hands. Adam moved closer to Titus. Adam. If it's an enemy, I'll get you out of here. Good morning, Your Maj... A tall, slender man with an eyeball-melting orange suit stood in the doorway, stopping short at the sight of Titus's keepers. Titus pushed the wind to feel around the newcomer, and he didn't feel any malice or anger from the man. He kept his power out just in case, although he couldn't do much beyond warn his keepers if or when the man would attack. Who are you and what do you want? Seth asked. He was fully naked, all his muscles and beautifully golden-brown skin on display, and Titus was reacting before he thought about it. His eyes hurt, and the wind picked up near him. He pushed the man out of the room and shut the door. The wind pushed so hard it nearly broke. Titus looked at all of his men, and none of them had clothes on. The newcomer had clearly eyed all of them. Titus's blood boiled. They were his now, no one else's. Master, Seth bowed. Mozzie and Adam went to one knee in front of him. New rule. Clothes on in front of anyone but each other, Titus said. Yes, Master, they said in unison. Titus calmed himself down. He felt a little light-headed as he relaxed. He caught himself before he fell face first into the sheets. "Master," Seth said as he grabbed him and wrapped Titus in his big arms. Titus pressed his face firmly against Seth's large chest and breathed in his scent. "You can call me Titus again," he murmured into his skin. There was a knock at the door, and Titus groaned in annoyance. "I can burn his eyes out of his head," Mosky suggested. Titus had some issues because he was seriously considering taking Mosky up on the offer. "No, just everyone put some clothes on first." Titus pulled back from Seth to get out of the bed. His head still felt a little light, but it wasn't anything he couldn't deal with. Seth's hand stopped him from getting all the way out of bed. "Seth, are you okay?" Titus checked himself out, and other than the little bit of lightheadedness, he was fine. The door opened before Titus replied, and Mosky sent a fireball flying. "Damn it, you almost set me on fire," Cale said. "Almost being the key word," Mosky said. Titus smiled at Cale, happy to see him. He was in different clothes and looked a lot better than he had before. There were still dark circles under his eyes, but they weren't as prominent. His hair was neatly tucked away in his usual bun. After Titus had seen exactly how long Cale's hair was, he had no idea how he got it all in a bun. He imagined it took a lot of work and that it was incredibly heavy. "Morning, Cale," Titus said. Wait, should I have said good morning, or was that lame too? Titus heard a laugh in the link from Mosky. "Mosky, you're too cute." Titus felt the heat rise in his face. He just didn't want to seem lame or whatever. "Morning. I just brought some clothes for you guys. Next time I'll let you all walk around naked," Cale said, glaring at Mosky. Mosky shrugged, but Titus knew that if Mosky really didn't like Cale, then the fireball he had thrown wouldn't have missed. "Thank you, Cale. Where did you get the clothes?" Seth asked. He reached out and grabbed the bag Cale had in his hands. Cale audibly swallowed as he looked around the room and noticed they were all naked. It didn't bother Titus in the least. Although Cale wasn't officially his keeper, Titus knew he would be. "The orange guy gave them to me. He looked scared for his life and asked me to bring the clothes to you." "Were you naked when he approached you?" Titus asked. Cale looked at him, and there was a smirk on his face. Titus's blood boiled at the thought of someone seeing Cale naked. He may not be bonded yet, but he was Titus's. "No, I wore a robe I found in the bathroom," Cale said. Titus relaxed. His stomach took the opportunity to rumble, announcing to everyone in the room that he was hungry. "Everyone get dressed. We're going down for some food." Seth opened the bag and distributed the clothes. Each stack of clothing was labeled with the person's name. Titus put on dark jeans and a gray sweater. It was plain and simple, and he sighed, relieved that the orange suit guy didn't try and dress him in a suit or fancy clothes. Titus turned, admiring his men. Seth had a tight-fitted t-shirt that showcased his muscles perfectly, and tight dark blue jeans. Mosky's clothes fit him perfectly. Ripped jeans with a white t-shirt and an open button-up plaid shirt over. Titus turned to look at Adam, and he nearly swallowed his tongue. "Mosky. Damn." Titus had to agree. Adam looked like a sexy as fuck silver fox. "Adam, be a good boy." Titus watched Mosky squirm a little, and Titus was no longer hungry for food. "Seth, we eat first, then we can have fun." Titus sighed and turned to Seth. "Fine." Cale was looking at all of them with heat in his eyes as if they were still naked. He made eye contact with Titus and quickly turned away. Titus smiled. Any day now, and Cale would be in bed with all of them instead of sleeping in one of the other rooms. Exiting the room, they went down the stairs and into the kitchen. Titus's mouth watered at the buffet of food laid out there. There were waffles, sausage, bacon, eggs, grits, biscuits, croissants, and fruit. Seth steered him over to the large table in the kitchen and sat him down. He walked away, and Titus looked at all the delicious food with want. Seth didn't keep him waiting, fixing 2 huge plates of food. He set a plate piled high with bacon and waffles in front of Titus. He even poured the syrup over his waffles for him. Titus smiled and kissed Seth before he dug into his food. When he came up for air, he looked around the table, and everyone was watching him chew on his food. Titus, eat already. I know you guys have to be just as hungry as me. They all started to chow down. With his mouth full, Titus just looked to Kale. Kale got the point and started to eat. Titus cleared 2 plates before he started to slow down. Mosky brought him a plate of fruit, and since he was getting full, he ate it slowly. Seth stiffened next to him, and Titus was guessing someone had walked into the kitchen. His view was blocked by Seth's hulking body, though. "Excuse me, Your Majesty?" Titus put down the pineapple he was about to eat. He knew that voice. Titus. Orange suit guy? Seth. Yes. Titus was still a little upset that the guy had walked into his room and saw his men naked. He was thankful for the clothes, but still. Titus. Let him come sit down. Come and have a seat, Titus said. Kale looked at Titus and pulled a seat out for the stranger. For Kale not to be bonded and privy to their mind link, he still easily picked up cues. All of his keepers pretended to relax. Seth. One wrong move and he's dead. Mosky. Burn him to a crisp. Adam. That might be too messy. Seth, can I have a blade? Titus said nothing in the link. He would let his keepers handle it. The man with the bright orange suit sat. He looked a little unsure of himself and slightly afraid, which he should be, because Titus was unsure how he felt about the man. About this morning, I apologize for walking in on you. I was told to give you clothes, and I assumed you would be expecting me." His head was bowed, and a small tremble took over his body. Titus watched him, eating a piece of fruit before sitting back. "What's your name?" "Gavin, sir." As if he didn't think that was enough information, he continued. "Gavin Himes?" Titus ate another piece of fruit. No one spoke, all eating and glancing at Gavin. Titus watched as Gavin started to fidget as the silence went on. "Gavin, first I want to thank you for the clothes. The styles you picked out work perfectly." Gavin seemed to relax, a smile crossing his face. "I'm so happy you like them. Our mess didn't give me a lot of information, so I had to do a lot of guessing." Titus nodded, biting off a piece of bacon, enjoying the food. He would have to thank the cook later. He let the silence in the room fill until it screamed with awkwardness. He glanced at Gavin, who was quickly realizing there was something wrong. He fidgeted in his seat, his eyes shifting around the table and glancing at each of Titus's keepers, but they all stared back with neutral expressions. Titus wanted to laugh at how ridiculous Gavin was starting to look, but he knew this was key. Gavin had walked in on him and his keepers. He had taken liberties upon himself that weren't given. Titus sighed as he finished the piece of bacon in his hand. Seth handed him a napkin to wipe his hands clean. Titus smiled at his large alpha, kissing him on the cheek before turning his attention back to Gavin. "Gavin, what you did today? It can never happen again," Titus said, glaring. Without instruction, Mosky held a fireball aimed at Gavin, and Kale pressed a knife against his exposed neck. Gavin's eyes twitched from the fireball to Titus a few times before he closed them. The perspiration dotting his brow slid down his face as he sat there quietly, not daring to move or speak. "I'm glad that's taken care of," Titus said. Mosky extinguished his fireball and finished his food. Kale took the pocket knife and did some twisting trick before making it disappear. Then he too finished eating. Seth's hand on Titus's leg was reassuring. Titus knew he needed to stand his ground or they would walk all over him. He was mad that Gavin had seen his men naked, but by the way tremors racked looked up and down Gavin's frame. He felt like they might have gone too far. Adam. Nonsense. You defended what is yours. He will now know to never overstep again. Mosky. I can always toast him up a bit, maybe burn that awful orange suit up. Titus shook his head, holding back the laugh that threatened to spill. Titus stood from the table, all of his keepers following suit. Gavin looked around with scared eyes, scurrying to get up. Please, stay and eat, Titus instructed. Gavin looked to be lost for words. Titus didn't blame him. They'd just threatened his life. Titus smiled at him before picking up his finished plate, only for Seth to take it from his hands. A laugh came through the bond. Mosky. Our master will not clean up after himself. Titus rolled his eyes. He was still getting used to being a master and king. Picking up his dirty dishes wasn't a big deal, but from the looks Mosky and Adam were giving him, they thought differently. I'll keep that in mind, Titus said. Keep what in mind? Cale asked, coming up behind them as they left the kitchen. Titus sighed. Not supposed to collect the dishes, apparently, he said with all the sarcasm he could muster. Cale looked around the group before his brown eyes were back on Titus. He shrugged. I don't think you should. You know, he said, gesturing up and down at Titus. Titus rolled his eyes, but he didn't argue with them. They obviously all thought the same on the matter. Good morning, Ginger's cheerful voice rang out clearly. Titus turned to her, seeing her green hair braided to the side. She had a huge smile on her face, all of her teeth showing as she stood there with folders in her hands. Hi, Ginger, Titus greeted. Ginger's smile widened impossibly big. He'd never thought anyone could smile so wide. Her gaze traveled to each of his keepers, even Cale, giving each of them a slight nod of respect. Shall we go to the sitting room to discuss a few things? Lead the way, Titus said. He'd only looked around the house a little bit, so he still didn't know where everything was. He was pretty sure Ginger wasn't talking about the living room in the front of the house. She nodded and turned left, going farther into the house. Before they made it to the very back of the house, she turned again, entering another room. Titus stopped in his tracks, his eyes traveling over the large room. It was more like a ballroom with couches and chairs everywhere. It was surprisingly not tacky in the way it was decorated, but he could easily see the room being used for dances or big parties. Not that Titus was into parties. At least, not that he knew of. Ginger turned to where they were still standing, and her smile dimmed a little. You don't like it? She whipped out her phone in a flurry of motion. I can have an interior decorator here in a few minutes, she said with the phone pressed to her ear. Titus was surprised by how fast she could work. That won't be necessary. Ginger held the phone away from her face, giving him her full attention. The room is fine the way it is. I was just surprised is all. He walked farther into the room. He looked to the silver chair that was like a throne, and bypassed it, going for the comfy-looking couch. Seth sat first, bringing Titus down with him to sit between his legs. Mosky grabbed one of the couch's throw pillows, moving to sit on the floor right under Titus and wrapping an arm around one of Titus's legs. Adam sat on the armrest of the couch, making it look comfortable. Cale sat next to Titus and Seth on the couch. Why do we need so many rooms with couches? Cale asked. Titus shrugged. He hadn't really thought about all the sitting rooms they had in the large house. Some hunters stay within the main house as well. It helps being comfortable. Plus, parties, Mosky supplied. Ginger took the other couch, and she didn't even glance at the pompous throne Titus was certain he would get rid of. It looked stiff and uncomfortable. He hadn't been raised as a king, although he was fine with fulfilling the role now. He didn't want to sit in the chair. It felt like a step too far. Seth. You're our master no matter where you sit. Mosky. Yeah, even on my face. The image that accompanied Mosky's mental words had Titus squirming against Seth. Titus riding Mosky's tongue as it plunged in and out of Titus's hole. He barely held in a moan, and Seth's hands tightened around him. Titus scooted back until he was firmly pressed against Seth's chest. Titus knew he wasn't the only one affected by the mental image Mozzie shared. The unmistakable hardness of Seth's dick pressed firmly against his lower back. Mozzie moved a little on the floor. Titus glanced over at Adam, who kept his eyes trained forward, but Titus could see the way his hands clenched tightly to each other. The only one not affected was Cale, since he didn't see the image, but it didn't escape his notice. He eyed them all warily, and with a little longing in his brown eyes. Seth. He wants to be a part of us and be with you. Titus. I want him. Adam. He's already yours. Mozzie. He's still new to everything, but even he knows that he wants you. Titus hoped they were right. He took a deep breath, turning his focus back on Ginger. Titus. King. Ginger pulled out some paperwork, then got up, grabbed a small table in the corner, and brought it over. Titus watched her as she placed the table a little ways from Mozzie, but close enough that Titus could see all the papers she laid out. Document after document laid on the table until the wooden surface disappeared and all that was left was papers. The words blended together as Titus stared blankly at them. All of these are the contracts of businesses. As the king, you get a portion of all business that's conducted within your territory. Ginger informed him. How big is my territory? Titus asked. The words left his mouth, but claiming a territory was foreign to him. He eyed the paperwork, already feeling a headache coming along just thinking about going through all of it. Adam stood and picked up the first set of documents, silently going over them. Ginger watched him for a second before she looked back to Titus. It's about the size of this town and a few others around here, she said. Titus sat up. It wasn't the largest territory, but there was no way he could protect all of it. How many people? Ginger shrugged. There is a rough estimate of the number of edoli that inhabit this territory and the humans who know of them. There are more humans than edoli. Titus sighed, rubbing his forehead. Suddenly he wanted to go back to the small cabin where there was no territory or people to rule over. He felt a weight on his shoulders, and nothing had even happened yet. Seth. You're not alone. All of us are here with you. Adam and Mozzie both agreed through the bond, and it eased some of the tension that sat like a rock in his stomach. Some of the contracts will need to be looked over again, Adam said. Titus turned and saw 2 more documents in his hand. Adam waved the paperwork before he placed them back on the table. I'll look them all over and have new ones ready for you by the end of the week, Adam said. Ginger looked surprised, and she glanced at Titus for confirmation. Titus nodded, happy that Adam would take care of it. He had no doubt in his mind that Adam could handle it. Adam, I will not let you down. Mozzie, sexy and smart. Seth, don't even start. Titus laughed at their antics. Ginger eyed him, confusion on her face, but Titus wasn't going to clue her in on their thoughts. Is there anything else? He asked. Yes, sir. If you're up to it, I have some of the higher-ranking hunters here. They are wanting to meet you and pledge loyalty. Titus internally groaned, but nodded. Ginger was up and out of the room in seconds. What did I miss? Cale asked. Titus turned to tell him not to worry about it, but didn't get a chance. I sent a mental image of me eating Titus's ass, Mozzie answered. Titus whipped his head around to look at Mozzie. He smiled, leaning his head back to stare up at Titus. That explains why all of you looked like an orgy was going to break out, Cale said. Titus cleared his throat. If Ginger hadn't been in the room, that would have been the case. Too bad I missed it. Guess I'll have to wait to see it in person, Cale said. Titus eyed Cale. The mischievous look Cale gave him had him wanting to say fuck it and have his way with him. His fingers itched to grip Cale's long hair and press their lips together in a deep, sensual kiss. Cale's eyes went from mischievous to scorching hot, as if he could read Titus's mind and knew his intentions. The desire that built inside of Titus was almost unbearable. Titus moved without thinking, going toward Cale. He easily slid from Seth's hands and straddled Cale. Cale's hands went to his waist, his deep brown eyes staring up at Titus with so much want that Titus felt it reflected in his own. Cale's tongue swept against his lips, the very lips Titus craved to kiss. His breathing became labored from the tension of holding himself back from the very thing he wanted. Titus wanted so badly to take it, to take what he knew was his. But he waited. He needed to know it was Cale's choice, and not just Cale reacting to Titus's desire. He looked into Cale's eyes, silently pleading. Without any words, Cale stretched up as one of his hands traveled from Titus's hip to the back of his head. His hand pressed against Titus's head, a breath leaving him as their lips touched. Cale deepened the kiss, and Titus let him, their tongues tangling as Cale's hand roamed all over Titus's body, as if he couldn't get enough. And it was glorious. The kiss they shared now was even better than the one they had shared before. It seemed even more desperate, as if Cale couldn't get enough of Titus. A moan left one of them, but Titus didn't know which, and couldn't have cared less. His hands shook as they went into Cale's hair and tangled in the long strands. He pulled their lips tighter together. Titus slowly pulled back. "Your eyes are glowing," Cale whispered. Titus didn't know what to say. He just wanted to kiss him again. He glanced over to Seth, Mozzie, and Adam. All of their hungry gazes were locked on Titus. They'd had every fiber of Titus tingling with need. He wanted all of them. It might be selfish, but Titus wanted all their hands on him at the same time and right at that moment. Seth was the first to move, getting closer, but he didn't pick Titus up from off Cale. He leaned forward, and instead of kissing Titus, he turned at the last second and kissed Cale. Titus moaned, watching the heated kiss between Seth and Cale. The easy way Seth took over the kiss and practically fucked Cale's mouth. From the moans and groans leaving Cale, Titus got the feeling he liked it. That, then the hard length that was pressed against his ass. Titus wiggled against Cale's clothed length, earning another moan from him. Seth's ice-blue eyes pierced through him as he stared at him just as Adam pressed behind Titus. He gently turned Titus's head to the side, bending and kissing him. His beard rubbing against Titus's face had goosebumps rising on his arms as he leaned back a little. "Oh, fuck," Cale moaned. Titus pulled back from the kiss with Adam, wanting to see what was happening. Mozzie sat next to Cale, his lips pressed firmly against Cale's neck, where there was already a marking. Titus growled in warning, and everything stopped. Mozzie looked up at Titus, moving back a little from Cale. Titus attacked before anyone knew better. He didn't drink blood, but he still bit the other side of Cale's neck, not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to leave a mark of his own. He sucked as hard as he could, trying to make the mark large. Cale squirmed under him and moaned, his hands flexing against Titus's hips, not pushing him away. Titus pulled back slowly, pressing his tongue against the mark that was quickly going from red to purple. Titus. Mine. Mozzie cast his eyes down, but before he could even move, Titus moved and pressed him firmly against the couch cushions, his body blanketing Mozzie's. Titus. Mine. Mozzie. Yours. Mozzie's head went to the side, exposing his neck. Titus didn't hesitate to do the same to his skin, biting down hard and marking what was his, Mozzie's pale skin easily taking the mark. Titus felt hot all over, admiring his work. Adam knelt next to them on the couch, his head to the side, waiting for his mark. Titus didn't make him wait long. He moved over and easily bit down on the spot that showed the beat of Adam's heart. Adam groaned from the bite, so Titus bit a little harder, wanting to hear more. He slowly pulled back.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?